Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 402. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, usual cast of characters, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from Fort Boxing News and the Inscriber. And after being away for a good while, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing is back. What's going on, ladies and gents?
Welcome back, Jacob. We are glad to see you here, hot off Benevita's plant and other environs.
Good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacob was live in the building. And given what he reported on Twitter, had quite the good time for himself. I'm happy for him. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc. Talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science in any way, it will get discussed. If you want to find out all the information, you can go to the site, p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find links to check us out. Links for the YouTube channel, links for the Facebook page, Tumblr, IG page. In terms of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report on Twitter, let's just say I'm working on it. It's a little bit tougher than I thought. For those who do not know, Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page was hacked, unfortunately, and subsequently X'd out by Twitter. So I'm in the process of working behind the scenes to get a new page. And like I said, it's coming. It's coming. Just you have to keep your trust in me. Also on the site, you will find links to where you can donate. Got Cash Me, PayPal donation links. For those who are getting their tax returns back and want to shoot some spare change our way, we would greatly appreciate it. Doesn't matter to us if it's $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever you want to contribute. It'll help the overall production behind the scenes. If you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and that subscribe button. Help the overall algorithms and get us closer to being monetized. Certainly last but not least, check out the link to the page to Beachbody, what is now known as BODI. If you're looking to get your body right for the summer, please check out BODI fitness programs for whatever your interests are, whatever your fitness goals happen to be. If you are looking for if you're looking to get your weightlifting on, I suggest you check out Lift 4 and the follow-up to Lift 4, Lift More. If you're really looking to challenge yourself physically, check out programs like 645 and especially 6 weeks of the work. The P90X series 1, 2, and 3, they still there. Particularly P90X 2 and 3 are excellent. The Asylum and the Asylum Insanity series. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, check out 10 rounds. That's a 6-week program. 3 days a week, you do boxing based cardio. 2 days a week, you do weightlifting, resistance work. At the very least, take advantage of the 14-day free trial. And that is for 14 days, you get free access to any and all programs on Beachbody, aka what is now BODI. Let's get things going. Really light week this past weekend in boxing, so I just want to focus everything on one fight. William Zepeda, rising lightweight, has made a splash since he began fighting in the United States. Zepeda is from Mexico. Headlined a card kind of by default as Armanina Esparza. She was supposed to be on this card defending her unified women's flyweight titles. That fight was scratched as her opponent had visa issues. So Zepeda fought Jaime Arboleda. That became the main event. I'll go to you, Gail. Look, I was asking last week on the show, find me a way to, why should I be interested in this fight? The reason was because I knew it was going to be a blowout. I knew it was going to be easy work for William Zepeda. It was just that stopped him in 2. The question is, where does he go from here, right? He's highly ranked in the sanctioning bodies, particularly BA, BC, BO, I believe. With Haney fighting Lomachenko, with Shakur Stevenson and others, there's he won't get a title shot anytime soon. But the interesting backdrop is, in the aftermath, there is a video that's been floating around in boxing social media circles of Frank Martin, who just won a WBA eliminator against Michelle at the end of last year. He approached Zepeda and basically put his hand out, gesturing, right, and said, "We should fight sometime." What do you make of that gesture from Martin? And what say you about a potential bout between Martin, who I believe is WBA mandatory, and Zepeda moving forward?
Well, Zepeda really blew into my vision when he completely took out one of Golden Boy's, up to that point, promising prospects, Hector Tanahara. I mean, he wiped the floor with Tanahara, who was at that point undefeated. He made Tanahara look like he was fighting in slow motion. And he's continued to do nothing but impress ever since. His work rate is phenomenal. He barely worked up a sweat this weekend, and the fans didn't care. He put on a tremendous power punching performance. He's relentless. His engine is second to none. He's got the highest punch stats per round of any lightweight, and among active fighters, he's, I think, in the top 3 or 4 of punches per round. He has essentially sent Jojo Diaz into, gatekeeper status in his previous fight. Here's Zepeda's problem. Very competitive division where all the top names are with other promoters. And they're all tied up, as you mentioned. Devin Haney's got a date with Vasily Lomachenko. We have Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez tied up. Shakur Stevenson's floating around out there. They're all waiting to see what happens in the next few fights, to see how everybody's dance card gets filled out. And Zepeda's going to have to wait for all of that to happen and see who else is available. The smartest thing he can do is stay busy, even if he has to take on people like Arboleda, who is, perfectly competent, serviceable, and ended up being completely outgunned. Frank Martin is in a little bit of the same position. So while there'll have to be some promotional barriers crossed for a lot of the young lightweights, the division is hot. So if the interest and the money is there, they'll do it. Here's the big problem. Right now, Zepeda isn't known to a lot of fans except for the complete degenerates that are on this panel. We all know him. We've all seen him. We're all impressed by him. How much of an impression did he make on this DAZN card, which was, a very meager card and probably not watched by a lot of people because they just flat out forgot about it in the aftermath of the big Tank and Ryan weekend, or they're pissed off at DAZN because of the pay-per-view disaster they had the previous week and they've canceling or boycotting or something. Really terrible timing for Zepeda. And hopefully they'll watch him. They'll go back and see the fight on YouTube. Friends, it's not a spoiler alert to say it was a pretty brief fight. And if you didn't see it, after the show, go check it out. See what William Zepeda's about. He's a fighter from Mexico City. He trains at altitude. He carries himself well. He's a good interview. And he's fun. He's just fun to watch. But right now, it's the old risk versus reward. He doesn't bring enough eyeballs to make the paydays worth it for his opponents to take a risk against him. And then it's a chicken and egg issue. He's going to have to keep fighting Arboleda type fighters, getting those knockouts, getting those great performances over and over and over. And he wouldn't be the first fighter who had to do that. The one thing he can't do is sit around and wait for the big names. He needs to stay busy. He needs to keep racking up wins and put himself in position and be ready, hopefully when that call comes, and you know, he might get one at the last minute when one of these guys has a major opponent fall out. William Zepeda is going to be sitting there. And you know, really the same advice applies to Frank Martin.
Mercito Jester has also been mentioned as a possible opponent. There's word been floating that the two could fight late July, either in June or late July. Excuse me. I go to you, Jacob. It's been a while since you've been on here. I don't think you talked about Zepeda here on Pound for Pound Box Report. Your impressions of him, your thoughts of him as a fighter, and where do you see him vis-a-vis the 135-pound division?
Yeah, I mean, like Gel said, there wasn't much to kind of absorb in this short fight, you know, and I agree with her. Probably most people weren't watching this fight. If anything, that probably people were watching the replay on Showtime of the Tank and the Garcia fight, because that was the big fight the weekend before. But yeah, he's in a little bit of a dilemma because like Gail mentioned, a lot of people are tied up. You know, you got the cross promotional things that, you know, don't always happen. I think it would be a mistake to go against someone like Stevenson, who I would rank probably. I mean, I can't really see anybody in and around the division beating Stevenson anytime soon. I have him highly ranked. So I would, you know, I think the name mentioned of Martin, if they can make that fight, is a good one, or Mercito is another one. But I agree with Gail. You know, I think we're the same mindset where you want to stay busy. You don't want to be on the shelf too long. You know, even if it's not a top 10 opponent, but at least get some rounds in, because there's a difference between training in the gym and being in the ring. You know, I think there's a huge difference. So he could see how everything shakes out with the, you know, a couple fights that we have on the horizon here, and then see if he can get his card punched for one of those fights. But he might have to make some concessions, you know, to get one of these other guys that are, you know, aligned with another promotion. But, you know, as I always say, you know, just take the risk, you know, and, you know, you'll reap the rewards if you're up for it.
What say you about Zepeda? I went to Daniel last on purpose because mainly because his Miami Heat right now is in a tightly contested contest against the New York Knicks. So I won't give him some time to watch that. But your thoughts on Zepeda post this easy work against Arboleda?
He did what he was supposed to do. Granted, he got put into this position where the main event fight fell through. Unfortunately, we know what happened with Virgil, so he came up to the main event. Now, he did what he was supposed to do, but unfortunately, a lot of the flaws that a lot of people will point out came up, which is, okay, he'll take his shots, he'll throw the body shots, but he left his defense pretty open. And he got hit a couple of times flush. Now, granted, it didn't seem to phase him, didn't seem to hurt him, but that's why he's probably right now still on the fringes of being a contender. Because right now, you don't really want to put anybody that's really high caliber, like, or anybody that's close to it, because he's that WBA regional guy right now. So that would mean Haney, if it fell down that route. Haney will hold him for days. He won't let him happen, and he will counter him fairly well. There's still a lot that he has to clean up, but you put him on the card, you're going to be guaranteed an entertaining fight. You're going to be guaranteed an action-packed fight. He just has to clean up a lot more than what he needs to do. That way, it can be more of a complete package and something that you can actually make a serious contender in as loaded a division as lightweight is.
So he's in a position, to Gail's earlier point, where he's a good fighter. He's a talented fighter. He's on the ascend, but in terms of getting a title shot anytime soon, it's not going to happen because of the state of his division. But he's certainly a guy to keep an eye on. Very entertaining, a guy and a fighter who you want to see again. I want to thank MJ is here for checking us out live. Your question, I should say, in the live YouTube chat, we will touch on that. So thanks for asking about that. Asking about it again. We will touch on that shortly. Let's move from that fight because that's the only real fight I want to focus on. Let's move to the news, and the big news of today happened to be around the arrest of Deontay Wilder. For those who do not know, Wilder was in LA, or is in LA. His car was pulled over by LAPD after his Rolls Royce was after the LAPD pulled him over. Wilder was riding in his Rolls Royce. They put him over because illegally tinted windows, which had obstructed his license plate. Once they pulled him over, they claimed that they noticed, smelled marijuana. Further inspection of his vehicle, they found marijuana. Wilder was arrested because of illegal possession gun charge. Ultimately arrested, booked, let out on bond earlier this morning. I'm going back to you, Gail, and to you, Jacob, as well, because you two, both of you, currently reside in California, so you know the laws there. Give some details, number one, about this incident, as well as the laws specifically to California vis-a-vis the gun charge. In terms of the gun charge.
Well, Jacob, we read this stuff. We see this stuff all the time. Wilder was apparently in his Rolls driving in Los Angeles, early morning hours. And I don't know whether he was the driver or not, whether there was anyone else in the car with him or not. That was a little bit fuzzy to me. But I gather that he was the driver because he was pulled over. Tinted windows are, technically past a certain point are illegal in California. A shit ton of people get away with it anyway. He also was missing a license plate. And a ton of people get away with that too. You're supposed to have a front and back plate. A lot of people don't have a front plate. Anyway, a Rolls is cruising the streets. They're going to pull it over. He gets out. Apparently, he was very cordial. He was very cooperative. No reason he should be. You didn't think he was doing anything wrong. And technically, it is absolutely legal to consume marijuana recreationally in any form in California, except you should not be driving under the influence. So if they can smell it in your car, then they've got to determine, are you an impaired driver? It's not like testing for alcohol. It's more complicated than that, right? Well, it also gives you the premise to look around in the car and see, there's all these little ticky-tacky things, tinted windows and the license plate, and, there's marijuana in the car, and he's a 6'7", well-dressed, wealthy black man, and it's just, layer upon layer of the pastry. And he apparently consents to, hey, feel free to look inside the car, nothing wrong. And he has a firearm in the car, a legally owned firearm that belongs to him. Well, that's fine. But in California, if you're going to carry it in your car like that, you need a concealed weapon permit. And no, he does not have a California issued concealed carry permit. So there's sort of the factor that tips it over the top enough for them to say, we're going to have to take you into our custody and book you on these charges, So they do. Not a big deal. He's going to pay a bail amount, which to somebody like Deontay Wilder is, not a lot of money, not a problem. With a promised to return for a, court date that, depending on what the district attorney decides, is really little more than a ticket for somebody who's not in trouble, has no other issues. These are all, little minor offenses, one over the other. Here's the difference. In Los Angeles County, there are squads of people who work for TMZ, which is run, owned, and hosted by a very experienced Los Angeles attorney named Harvey Levin, who they do nothing but scour the overnight booking paperwork at all the law enforcement departments and look at all the court paperwork that comes in overnight. A lot of the stuff's electronic. It's all public record. And the minute somebody famous is named on one of those documents, bingo, boom, oh, now they have a headline story on TMZ. It is a lot of work to do that. But if you know what you're looking for, it is all public record. And they spot Deontay Wilder's name. To their credit, TMZ and TMZ Sports know all the key players in combat sports, including boxers. And suddenly Deontay Wilder, on a very slow boxing news day, other than the announcement of the Jared Anderson fight card in Toledo, they finally got a story. So there we go. It's probably more an annoyance, a headache for Wilder than anything. I hesitate to say it's the exact equivalent of you or I getting a speeding ticket, but it kind of is. Deontay Wilder is not known to be a banger or a troublemaker in the slightest. I don't know that he has any previous arrests or so much as a traffic ticket in California. No idea. But hey, this will completely go away. The bigger issue is, in theory, Gervonta Davis has a court date this week. I have heard no mention of that. And his immediate future is potentially in doubt. That should be bigger news, and we should all be more concerned about that, not Deontay Wilder and his legally owned firearm without the proper paperwork.
So to piggyback what Gail just said, Jacob, while this is clickbait worthy and all that, this amounts to in California just basically a simple misdemeanor. Move on.
Yeah, I mean, she hit up on all the good points. My frustration with this, with anybody that has, a lot of money and that's a celebrity, is why the hell are you driving yourself when you don't have to? Especially if you want to, abide in whether it's alcohol or marijuana or whatever. And then two, you're a target for things, especially if you're driving a car that has, like the tin or loud music or, whatever. It looks like there's money behind it or whatever, like Gail said, all the factors. So you're going to stand out. So you have to be super careful. Yes, it's a little nothing story, at the end of the day. And I agree with her. I don't think that he's ever been in trouble with the law before. But it's like, why, you have the means to not have to go through this shit. So like, why do it? Like, I just don't get it. Like when a celebrity goes and buys their own drugs and stuff like that, I'm like, you have all these people, you're probably paying their cell phone bills, their rent and all that stuff. Send them to go do it. And if they get caught, then, it's on them. But, it is what it is. But, she's right. There should be more on this Gervonta Davis thing, because I think that's a bigger deal than this, which is going to, basically fade in the distance.
Indeed. So yeah, had to report on it because it was big. It made the waves all over boxing social media. We wrote about it on 3kings.com. Please check out 3kings.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the crew, the staff, 2K, aka Prodigy of Boxing, who's the head of 3 Kings. Bo, who you heard on this show numerous times. He was on here last week, as a matter of fact. Both head of media relations, senior writer. I'm myself senior writer. Shout out to Bakari, who's also a writer, and all the other contributors and folks who do work on the show. Shout out to Red and others who do work on the website and contributors behind the scene. I didn't mention this in the docket, but excuse me, right quick. I didn't mention this in the docket, but shout out to MG. He mentioned this during our show this evening. Story involving one Regis Prograis, and I'll put it here since you asked the question, MG. He asks if you have the time, can you and your guests talk about the news of Prograis signing with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing? Is it a good move and better than signing with Top Rank? I'll go to you, Daniel, for your thoughts on Regis Prograis, who's the current WBC 140-pound champion. He had left Pro Bellum as they are in upheaval right now. A bunch of fighters left Pro Bellum and has ended up with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom.
This move is perplexing in many ways because most of the contenders at 140, and this is a situation where Prograis has been wanting to do unifications or even get top fights. Most of the contenders are with either Top Rank, PBC, and if you still want to count Ryan Garcia, you still have them one with Golden Boy. There really isn't one that you consider a top contender until today with Regis himself that you can see is at least affiliated or at least on good terms with Matchroom. Because should we talk about the IBF 140-pound situation? The pettiness that's happening between Eddie and Bob when it came to that fight? In case people don't know, the IBF had a purse bid. The main two bidders were Top Rank and Matchroom. One Top Rank fighter and I think one Matchroom fighter. Eddie Hearn won the bid, barely. So Bob pulled. No, I don't think. No, sorry, not IBF, WBO. But either way, Bob pulled his fighter from the title eliminator, and the WBO is going to go to the next in line, which is another top rank fighter who's probably going to not take the fight either. It doesn't make this person doesn't make sense unless he got really good assurances from Eddie that he's going to be able to get the fights that he wants to get. It's perplexing, and it feels like more like a lateral move, like something he had to do because of the situation with Pro Bellum. That it was pretty much a tumbling Jenga tower, and he just had to find some place where there's at least some level of competence where they could guide his career. Because unfortunately, he experienced what the PBC was like, and it wasn't a good experience for him. And doing it on his own has not produced the best results. So maybe this will work out better in a business sense, but right now, looking at the fights that he can make, it doesn't make sense to me.
Go to you, Jacob and Gail. Do you agree with Daniel's assessment? Is this a puzzling, head-scratching decision on the behalf of Rulu?
Well, maybe if his main objective, laser focus objective is to avenge his loss against Josh Taylor, then no, because this leaves him open to potentially working with Taylor and Boxer at that fight. Now, Top Rank in no way in hell would deal with that. But Eddie, yeah, he would. So if he's got his sights set on a rematch and the big money to stage that fight is in the UK, and this is, I hope, a limited contract for that purpose, then yes. What it also tells me is he intending to move up after he gets his revenge? It's sticking around at 147, which he's talked about forever. Well, there isn't a lot for Prograis at Top Rank at welterweight. Now, does this give him the maximum flexibility to work across the aisle with some of these other promoters? Potentially, yes. So I don't see it as quite the crazy move. If PBC is not an option, which it apparently is not, then I don't see this as a particularly bad choice. Eddie treats his fighters fairly well. He really fights hard for them to get paid. He has inroads into that Middle Eastern money. Prograis has fought there. Prograis is not afraid to be a road warrior. I think that he has done some very careful thinking about both his immediate plans, his long-term plans, and his career-ending plans. He is a very smart athlete. He definitely wants to be in control of his own fate, whether he makes a mistake or not. He has tended to surround himself with people to give him advice. How he processes that, I don't begin to know, but he is thoughtful and he plays chess, not checkers. So I trust that he has got a strategy in mind, and we just don't know exactly what it is yet.
Read a comment here in the chat. Daniel, hope to have him back soon. He may have some technical issues on his end. Los Libertinos podcast says maybe Eddie / DAZN didn't promise the best challenges, but the best matches that can elevate his career. Here's the thing. You mentioned the other fighters, the main fighters. You got Taylor, you got Ramirez, and we all know the saga that has been in attempts to get a bout between Prograis and Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez, to me, has become one of the biggest, if not the biggest diva in boxing, demanding a certain amount, upset over purse bid and whatnot for a matchup, for an attempt to make that fight both last year and earlier this year. You got Barroso, who's a champion as well. He's with PBC, I believe. You mentioned Daniel, the saga when it came to the WBO eliminator. That's what that was. Yeah. Your thoughts? I'll go to you, Jacob. Your thoughts on Prograis signing with Matchroom?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Daniel on this one. I don't think it's, I guess, depending on what he wants to do, to Gel's point, but I just don't see it like being the best move. I hope we don't end up with like where sometimes the fighters are trying to steer their career and end up with an Andrade situation where, they end up not getting the big fights or not being able to get the big fights, and they just kind of waste their prime. In the matchups, if he wants to get certain matchups, I think he should have done something different. And didn't he also fight for that promotion? What was that? Like half concert, half. I feel like he had a fight on one of these promotions.
I believe he was on.
Oh, Triller.
Yeah.
I think he fought on that card, and so like.
Yeah, and he had to fight to get his paycheck as well. So that, he has gone down some rat holes. That is for sure.
So that leaves me concerned. Like when you do decisions like that, and then have all that. So it's like, is he really knowing what's best for his career? I don't know. I mean, we'll all see at the end of the day. I mean, it is a little bit of a crapshoot, because even when people align with certain promotions, sometimes we don't even see those fights that we should see, that are easy to make, or we don't see them when we should. So I don't know. I like I said, I'm more with Daniel on this. I think it's pretty perplexing, but we'll see what happens.
Well, if he's had problems getting paid in the past, in fact, as I recall, his paycheck for the Hooker fight was delayed as well. Eddie, I've never heard him stiffen his fighters on paychecks. So this stage of his career, maybe that's the issue that meant the most to Regis.
Yeah, interesting move, indeed, on the part of Regis Prograis. What fruit will this bear? Will he get the big fights? Whether it's a rematch with Josh Taylor, who's set to fight Teofimo Lopez in June, whether him and Ramirez can finally get a bout together, whether it's Barroso, who the two have been doing a lot of trash talking towards each other on social media. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But we will see where it goes, and any
And does
further
it sound like
announcement.
Does it sound like Lopez is going to leave Top, or there's some? I've heard like some rumblings that he's not happy with Top.
Let's talk about this. Let's do a rehash of this, a part two of this. We talked about this a lot during the show last week. Daniel, myself, Bo, and your colleague over at nyfights.com, Gail Marquise, right? For those who have been sleeping under the rock for the past 7 to 10 days, Teofimo Lopez was in an interview, not impromptu interview, but he was in an interview while training, and he just went off on ESPN on Andre Ward. Tim Bradley claimed that this was his last fight. This is going to be his last fight with Top Ranking. To paraphrase to him, they can keep all the black fighters, blah blah blah, which got a lot of people justifiably upset. We went into a deep dive in that last week. Since you was not here, Gail, and this is your first time back in a while, Jacob. Your thoughts on that whole saga? Teofimo Senior trying to apologize, which didn't really come off well, and we talked about it that last week as well. The ramifications of Teofimo Lopez, who has maybe burned his last bridge with Top Rank because he said he put a target on his back. You read about that, sir, because you better win against Taylor, because if you don't, there's a good chance that Top Rank is going to let you go, and he's letting his mouth run him out of boxing.
Well, who's surprised by this? He decides to bite the hand that feeds him, literally, because he doesn't like the lack of deference. My understanding is that the folks at Top Rank internally feel they have done right by him. They have promoted him. The takeover, they made him a big star. He's had his loss. He hasn't produced since then like they hoped. They perceive a lack of effort, and they also perceive a lack of gratitude. And I think a lot of those folks are secretly, or maybe not so secretly, hoping that he loses, and they'll be very glad to wash their hands of him. He's become a very, very difficult person to deal with. And we haven't even brought up his father, who we all know is one of those boxing dads who thinks it's more about him than his son, the athlete. So it's just a big fat mess. But Lopez has never learned how to shut his damn mouth. And it's going to cost him a lot of money, and it's going to cost him a lot of fans. And I don't know if it comes from frustration over the way he thinks he's being treated, frustration about how his career is going, how his training is going. We all know he's had issues in his personal life. Things have been very messy for him. It's unfortunate because he does have talent. He is charismatic. He can put on a tremendously exciting, entertaining fight. But he's struggling right now to get a foothold, get a grip. He's going to have to find a new home, I think, here pretty quick. I'm very doubtful things are going to go well for him in this next fight. And then he really is going to be scrambling.
Your reaction to all of this, Jacob?
Yeah, I think y'all used the word earlier that I think is apt for this situation, a prima donna. I think Teofimo Lopez, I agree with Gail. He's talented, but he's become a prima donna. He's become, the believer in his own hype, or his own people hyping him up. For somebody as young as he is, and for what he's accomplished, so fast, he's starting to, like, I don't know, believe this aura about him that he's, I guess he deserves this and that. But I mean, in this game, to me, you need to, stay at the top. You need to, have the good performances and fight through adversity and do these things. And he hasn't looked the same since the height of his Loma win, where, I was quite impressed with the fact that, in that fight he was hurt, and that he was able to come back and actually, cement the win. But since then, it's just been a trajectory of bad thing after bad thing after bad thing, even though he's only lost that one time to Kambosos. But I think that, not only is the, maybe the handlers at the top rank hoping that Taylor wins, but I think the fans, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, the fans are like, I hope Taylor, knocks the dust off this guy. So I don't know. It could be, one of those cases where a flash in the pan, or, just biting off more than you can chew, especially after him questioning himself in his last fight, and, that going around, and, you don't like to see those things for a young up and comer. But, I kind of hope that Taylor, it gives him a little ass whipping, and hopefully brings him back down to reality, and humbles him a little bit. I think that's what he needs. He needs a little bit of a humbling, or what's equal to getting a switch in the backyard from the grandmother and getting a little spanking.
I have no more to add to that. All both of you, Gail and Jacob and Daniel and Bo and Marquise last week basically spoke for me. I have no more, and I said all that I said about that, about Teofimo and his dad last week. Just ridiculousness on all parts, and I guess the best word to describe it from my end is the F word that Daniel likes to use to describe people who partake, who say a bunch of nonsense. And what's that word again, Daniel?
Good old fashioned fuckery.
There you go. Let's move on. Let's move on from that foolishness on to news regarding the light heavyweight division and Artur Beterbiev, who's unified champion there, right? It's pretty much known. It's been pretty much known for a while that even in spite of talks of a possible fight between Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, who's WBA champion, that when it comes to Beterbiev, his next fight is going to be against Callum Johnson, mandatory challenger. First bid was held today, and it was won by Top Rank. For those who want to talk about it, your reaction to the fact that Top Rank won the bidding war over Matchroom to stage a fight between the hard-hitting Beterbiev and Callum Johnson. Callum Smith, excuse me, not Callum Johnson. Callum Smith, excuse me.
This is again one of these fights where it's for us, the degenerate crowd, right? The hardcore. It's not a big draw, big money, big gate fight. So when they go to purse bid, they play a bit of chicken over it, right? It's almost like, name that tune version of name that fight. How low can you go and still get it? And obviously their thinking was right on target because they were so close in their bids. But one guy is, 15 grand over the other? Was that the difference? It was really a small difference. And Top Rank will do a good job.
11,500 if I'm going to say.
There you go. Even narrower. Yeah, it was a really small amount of money. I mean, a small 5-figure amount of money. And I'm glad to see them both stay busy. Callum Smith deserves this opportunity. He's earned it. I think that he will find out what every other opponent has found out about themselves standing across from Artur Beterbiev. But better for them to stay busy, just like we talked about at the top of the show about William Zepeda. They need to stay busy. Fighters need to fight. Ring rust does them no good physically, mentally, and it's hell on the fans who move on to somebody else. When we're talking about these guys that are top tier performers, but not uppermost in the minds of the fans, they are below the big names the fans know. The Wilders, the Tank Davises, the Ryan Garcias, the Canelo Alvarez. They need to stay busy to hopefully take those small, steady steps toward at least aiming at that area where they become better known. If you don't see these guys for months and months and months at a time, out of sight, out of mind, that's how people are. That's how we are in our daily lives. So I'm glad to see it. I did get myself a good laugh seeing the narrow, tiny, almost shoulda, coulda, woulda difference between those two purse bids. But it tells us that was the right bid. They were both, right there next to the bullseye, but Top Rank hit it.
Daniel, Jacob, your reaction.
First, this was the get back for, like what I mentioned in the WBO Eliminator 140. This was Bob's get back, pretty much, to get to Eddie and to get this fight out of Eddie's hands. It is going to be interesting, and luckily, it does actually let Mauricio Suleiman off the hook for some of his comments they made earlier about a potential Beterbiev-Bivol fight and his stance on not making it. But this is good. This is going to be interesting because Callum is actually, I forget how much taller he may actually be than Beterbiev in this case.
He's up there. Smith is like 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah. So he has a pretty decent height and reach advantage over a lot of fighters. He had that in 168. He probably has that same thing once at 175. It is not as absurd as Zerto, but it's there. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to shape up because I remember just the beating his bicep took when he fought Canelo, trying to dodge his shots. Beterbiev is going to be a different animal. He's going to hit harder than a mule. But out of all the Smith brothers, Callum's been the one that had the most potential. So you never know. It could be a sneaky fight. It could be a sneaky win for him. But I would probably say more than likely the good almost Beterbiev is going to retain at the end of the day.
What say you, Jacob?
I actually kind of like this fight. I would still pick Beterbiev, but the thing is that for as good as Beterbiev is, we all know that he can be hurt, and he has been hurt in many fights. And he
excuse me for interrupting, but can it be argued that the Brahma Bull that is Beterbiev is starting to slow down a bit based on his last few performances?
That was going to be my second point. Yeah, is that I feel like he's getting older. He's definitely getting older, but he's definitely a different fighter, an older fighter, and I think on the end of his career versus his prime. And so, like his most recent fights, besides the Joe Smith whooping, he's been caught and hurt. And actually, this might not be a popular opinion, but I actually thought that Canelo had a better chance against him, Beterbiev, and getting those belts than he did against Bivol, and even in a second Bivol fight. I think because Canelo, the way he fights, and he kind of traps or lures people in so he can counter them, I think Beterbiev would be kind of open for that. So, I wouldn't put money on this fight because Smith has a chance, but if I had to bet, I'm probably going to go with Beterbiev because of just the momentum in general.
I too agree that Beterbiev coming in should be the favorite, but I think that Smith may be more of a live dog than a lot of people think. Because say what you want about him, he has size, right? He has at his best, he has a good jab and he has decent pop in his punches. And yeah, he went 12 rounds with Canelo and was um, lost badly. To me, he showed he had some steady staying power, and I think he could be even more sturdy at 175 than he is at 168. Certainly, it's better, it suits his frame better, right? Because of his height, and he was always considered a big dude at 168 pounds. Um, and yeah, when it comes to the Brahma Bull that is Beterbiev, I do see some deterioration um, physically, and I don't like how his face is starting to swell up and cut up in recent outings. Right, uh, Anthony Yard is not the most technically sound fighter in the world, if we're really going to be honest here, and yet for a good chunk of his match with Beterbiev, he was able to land. I think that Smith is a better overall boxer than Yard, and he could have some success too. The problem is that Beterbiev is so strong and he's hit so hard, right? And he has a funky little way of fighting, which he seems to be just a pure brawler, but he has better technical ability than a lot of people give him credit for. And I just don't know if over the long term that Smith would be able to ward him off for full 12 rounds. The question becomes, with Top Rank winning the purse bid, where is this fight going to land? Uh, will it land in England? Will it land here in the United States? Could we see it in Bersabiev's home area? Have y'all heard any words in these boxing streets about where this fight could end up?
Well, if Top Rank's going to produce the fight, they're going to want to do it somewhere cost effective. Beterbiev is actually a Canadian citizen, folks. Remember that.
That's right. I forgot Montreal. He's been living
And
in
he is
Montreal
a
since he turned pro,
French,
so
he is
it
now
could
a
end up
French
there as
and
well.
English-speaking resident of Montreal. And if you've ever heard him chit-chatting with George St. Pierre, it's a gas. It's wildly entertaining. They become very good friends. So maybe they do a co-promotion in Montreal. They're not going to do it in the UK. That's too much money for them. Unless somebody's really willing to, foot the bill. I think they may be staging this fight with an eye toward that possible fight and showdown with Bivol that we all want to see. And so they'd be smart to lay the groundwork now for whatever audience and whatever venue they think they want to stage the Bivol fight in. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was in Canada. So that'd be my leading contender.
Yeah, we'll keep you updated here on Pound for Pound Boxing Report when we hear some more details on the location and the date of this actual fight. And let's move on to preview some fights coming up. We mentioned we've heard Canelo's name has been thrown around a bit during the last few minutes. He makes his return to the ring, fighting in his home country of Mexico, fighting John Ryder, who's WBO interim champ at 168. Just going to throw it out there to anybody who wants this. Canelo is the clear favorite here. The simple question here is, how much of a chance, if any, do you give one John Ryder?
I give him a chance. It has been a year with more than its share of upsets so far. I don't expect this to be one of them, but Ryder isn't a complete patsy. He earned this opportunity by beating Zach Parker. Let us all recall that Ryder could have been standing across from Demetrius Andrade, who could have potentially won that fight and become the mandatory instead of Ryder. But Andrade chose not to take that fight. Zach, with Parker, so Ryder did. So hello, we end up with John Ryder. Ryder is solid, if not a thrill-a-minute guy. He is not a power punching threat, but he is taking it seriously. He's trained seriously. He will give a good effort. He has been a good soldier promoting the fight. He will earn his paycheck. But this is teed up to be a homecoming fight for Canelo Alvarez, who has not had a fight in Mexico at all since he fought Kermit Cintron, everybody, at junior middleweight. And he hasn't fought in Guadalajara for even a few years before that. So he's going to pack a big stadium. It'll be exciting. There'll be a ton of fanfare, a lot of color, music, spectacle, fireworks. I want it all. I expect it all. And I do expect a win. Can Ryder go the distance? That would alone be a moral victory for him. That's potentially possible. But I think Canelo will want to deliver a stoppage and will work very hard to do that. Be smart for him to get the work in. We do have to remember, though, he is rehabbing, a hand injury. So he's going to be testing that. We'll see how he looks. This is very important for that reason as well. How that hand feels and looks and goes, it's going to have a lot to say about what fight he takes next. And that, let's face it, everybody, is what we're all interested in. And that's the prism that most of us, yes, are going to watch this fight this weekend. We're not going to love ourselves for it. And those who are irritated with DAZN, I recommend you to ppv.com and avoid the frustration of dealing with DAZN, who certainly messed up a lot of people here a couple weekends ago. So, hey, enjoy it for what it is. Canelo Alvarez is not going to be around forever, and we'd all be wise to think about that. And if you do enjoy his performances and enjoy what he's meant to the sport, you should be watching this weekend.
At the very least, Jacob and Daniel, it should be a heck of a scene in Guadalajara this upcoming weekend, this Saturday night. And people will watch this fight with an eye in terms of what's going to happen next, or what could happen next, what is potentially down the road for Canelo should he win.
Yeah, I think it's no secret if most people know me. I'm not a huge Canelo fan. If I had to give a Ryder a percentage of what shot he has, probably like a 17% chance of winning. I think, his best chance of winning is to come in with the right game plan. Like, if he really wants to win this fight, don't fight like how Smith fought him and a lot of these other people have fought him, but take some pages out of the Bivol book and, fight him based on those type of strategies, and use his attributes, to push Canelo into an uncomfortable place, because I think Gel's right. Canelo's going to want to go for the knockout, I think, in front of his home crowd and while the fans. So, sometimes when a fighter has something in their mind that they want to do, maybe that could be a little nugget of a downfall that, you can capitalize on. But at the very least, I hope he makes it competitive. whether this leads to the rematch with Bivol or not remains to be seen. I mean, I'd much rather see Bivol fight Beterbiev, to be honest, to unify the belts than fight Canelo again, because I don't think the result will be different. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Is this on pay-per-view with DAZN?
It is indeed a pay-per-view in the United States.
Eddie Hearn, I swear to God, I want to stab that guy for him. Daniel, I'll give Daniel a lot of credit because he called it, because when they would say DAZN is the anti-pay-per-view and, you buy this service.
The devil. DAZN is the devil.
We told you, man. We told you.
Well, I'll get, they did do it for a long time before I don't even know what the first pay-per-view was, but yeah.
Sadly, for some reason, my original understanding was that it was going to be a little bit under, full-blown what passes for the so-called normal pay-per-view, price tag days. Well, I don't know what I was hearing. It didn't end up that way at all. It is every bit of $80 to watch this fight. So, this is what
legally stream it, everybody. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
there's a bunch of sites out there you can stream it.
I don't, and I don't advocate that stuff because A, God knows it is stealing, and B, the fact that people are bleeding off these pay-per-views to streams are why a lot of these fighters don't fight each other because they can't generate enough revenue. Now, when you have an attractive fight like Davis and Garcia, people were willing to pay. I mean, really, the only way you can afford to do this stuff regularly, the average working man and woman, you invite a bunch of friends over, or somebody is the fight house, right? That's where you have the barbecue, the dinner, the potluck, the whatever. If your buddy is paying for the fight, you need to kick in some of the food, some of the labor, some of the beverages, paying for the babysitters, whatever it is. You all chip in a little and you share the pain, right? You distribute the pain across, a bunch of people, then it becomes reasonable. Otherwise, if you're sitting there all by yourself and watching and you just powered out $80, that's rough. That's really rough, especially if you're going to do that a couple of times a month. So there you go.
Well, good thing, luckily, is that we're going to have to measure actually the actual buy rate of this fight because DAZN decided to be one of the worst customer service experiences for the Tank Garcia fight. They've had to give away a lot of coupons for the Canelo fight. In case people don't know, people have gone off on DAZN for almost charging them 3 or 4 times, maybe sometimes as much as 5 for the Tank Garcia pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Well, and that was because their streaming app wasn't working that well on the mobile devices. It was working better on the desktop. So
it's just damn irritating. Now the other issue, unfortunately, is that just 2 weeks away, we've got Haney and Lomachenko. That's a pay-per-view as well. Now, thankfully, that is the one where it's dropped a little bit under the market price. It's at $60. What we do have to remind ourselves about this weekend's fight is this fight is really not for the U.S. audience. It's just not. This is all geared toward the Mexican audience, whether they are there in person or they're watching. And they are not paying $80. They're just not. We're sort of playing loss leader. And honestly, I'm not sure they really give a damn whether we're watching, sitting here in, South Carolina or Long Beach or San Diego or the East Coast. They don't really care. So if you buy it, great. If you don't, you're probably a little more interested as a general American fan in Haney and Lomachenko. Great, so be it. And that's $60 on ESPN Plus pay-per-view, and that is the only outlet for that fight. So
Yep.
got to keep that in mind.
This fight's going to be interesting when it comes into it. When it comes to this fight, is you always have to worry about a fighter at the late stage of their career, and yeah, you can look at Canelo's age and try to say chronologically he shouldn't be in this script, but you have to remember this: Canelo's been fighting since he was 15 as a professional. So yeah, he's at the back end of his career.
And he's made that very clear. He has been very specific about the fact he's going to retire when he's 37 years old. I've heard him say that multiple times. And he's just about to turn 32. So
Yep.
That's
about 5 years. Yeah.
And I say to you, Beagle 47, woof, woof. You are right. You sniffed that one out.
Yeah, and I'll read his comments right quick before we move on to go on to some other fights. He says, Beagle 47, thank you for checking us out. Again, if you haven't done so, please make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. He says that after the design pay-per-view Garcia debacle, little chance of a pay-per-view buy from the U.S., unfortunately. I agree. Look, it is what it is, the return of Canelo. He's fighting a mandatory guy, someone on paper he should have little problems with. But this fight is ultimately, to Gail's point, is not necessarily about the U.S. audience. This is about Canelo making a triumphant return home after a long time of being away, building himself up to come one of the superstars of the sport from a financial perspective. I'm sorry, Tank Davis, but you're not the face of boxing yet, and until Canelo decides to call it a day. But yeah, that's what this is about. This is about Canelo. He's centered here. He is the center of this entire thing, and I'm not mad at DAZN and whatever for doing that. Is the pay-per-view price way too much? Absolutely. But again, it's not about us on this occasion. It's about him and his legions of fans and his base. And it is what it is. Let's move on to some couple of fights on the undercard here. Julio Cesar Martinez, right? It was just a few short years ago that El Rey was considered a burgeoning force in the lower weight rankings, right? He fought Charlie Edwards in a title fight, got disqualified because he landed a punch while Edwards was on a knee, right? He subsequently won the WBC flyweight title. His first few defenses, he looked awesome. But dare I say, Jacob, that in his last handful of fights, he has not looked good at all. We remember how he got beat up by Chocolatito Gonzalez a couple of years back. He's been dealing with the injury bug for the last couple of years. Fights been postponed, fights been rescheduled only to be scratched again. And so at this point, there is a giant question mark on the part of El Rey Gonzalez, who returns to the ring to fight Ronal Batista. You just don't know at this stage of his career, given all that he's gone through physically and otherwise, what does Julio Cesar Martinez have left at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually one of the people that thought that the Chocolatito fight, I didn't think he was gonna, I think a lot of people were picking, kind of writing Roman off, but I thought that Gonzalez was gonna win that fight, and he did it pretty handedly. but yeah, I mean, he had such great promise, after the Edwards fight that turned into a no contest, and he was kind of this force coming through. But like you mentioned, some of the issues he's had physically, and just like his performance of late. Does that mean that he's not the guy we think he is? I don't think so. I think this is his chance to basically turn it around. I don't know a ton about his opponent, but I think what he needs to do is he needs to be impressive in his win. Especially when you're fighting somebody that maybe is just that's supposed to be kind of a stepping stone to the next thing. You should win impressively. Do the things that got you there, and don't try to reinvent the wheel. Focus and get the win in a good fashion. So we'll see. We'll see what Martinez shows up, and the night of the fight. He's on a big Mexican card, so he'll have the fan base behind him, and as the co-main event for the Canelo main event. So I think they take the boxing a little bit more seriously. It'll probably be filled, before the co-main event, unlike Miguel's retelling of the Tank fight.
Any additional comments in terms of this fight, Daniel and Gil?
This fight, has to be a really good performance by Martinez, because unfortunately, like I said, his past performances have not been what we've seen before, what we expected it to. And this is the big stage to do it. You're in the co-main event. Obviously, home country fans, and it's time to show in that a lot of the issues that were brought up shouldn't come to pass, and to bring yourself back up to what you're supposed to be, especially in the weight divisions where you're 112. Okay, Bam is there, and you don't know for how long he's going to stay there, so you might as well get ready. Try to make that fight sort of be a little bit entertaining, but hopefully he pulls it out, because Martinez was really, really good coming up. I know the Chocolatito fight took a lot out of him, but hopefully this is a good stepping stone in the right direction.
What say you, Gail?
Really the same. This is somewhat of a homecoming fight for Martinez. He needs to perform well. Mexican fans really appreciate the smaller weight divisions. After all, once you get past Canelo, you could argue that the next biggest star in Mexico is Juan Francisco Estrada at 115. Who knows whether Martinez has some sort of idea that he could take on Estrada, especially after getting his ass kicked by Roman. But he's still very viable at 112. We have to remember that he did go up in weight to fight Roman Gonzalez. So this is his chance to put on a good show, and he should put on a good show.
Yeah, will we see the same? Will we see the destructive force that he was on the way up in his first few title defenses, or will we see the fighter who has been struggling over the last couple of years? That is the question for El Rey Martinez, leading up to his upcoming title defense against Batista. Last bout we're going to talk about here, the return of Oleksandr Gvozdyk, who was former champion at 175. Many fans remember him for his unification title loss to Beterbiev, where he was stopped, I want to say, round 10 or 11. 36 years old, Gail makes his return to the ring, fighting Richard Bolotniks. The question becomes, what does Gvozdyk at this age, does he have anything left? Does he have anything to offer at this point?
This is such an interesting situation. You're right. Gvozdyk was thought to be a really solid opponent for Beterbiev when they fought each other. And Beterbiev, Gvozdyk looked pretty good in the first half of their fight, but he got taken down and out to school, and he really ended up with a battering near the end, to the point that he decided to retire after losing to Beterbiev. Now, we have to remember when that was. That was in October 2019, pre-pandemic. He decided, I'm done. I'm retiring. I believe he went to law school, if I recall. He went into business of some kind. He was done. Never going to see him again. Good luck to you. Like some of his illustrious countrymen from Ukraine, he has served in the war against Russia. Whether that was a factor in him deciding he wanted to come back or something else, for whatever reason, in the last 6 months or so, he decided, you know what? I am not, after 3 years and a half of being out, maybe I'm not really done. He very quietly had a 6-round fight on the undercard of essentially a club fight. Jacob will appreciate this, in Pomona, at Fairplex in Pomona, about 2 months ago. And he faced a fighter from, just plucked an obscure dude, funny enough, from Guadalajara, whose record was, wait for it, 20, 35, and 2. 15 knockouts. So it wasn't exactly a threat. So he had a extreme rust shake off. He did fine. He won. He actually ended up putting in 6 rounds of work, but it was a complete shutout on all 3 cards, as it well should have been. So here he is, popping up against Ricard Bolotniks on this undercard in Guadalajara. Bolotniks is a fighter from Latvia. He lost about 2 years ago to Joshua Buatsi by TKO. That may be where his name sounds familiar to people. Otherwise, most of his fights have been in Latvia or elsewhere. So, kind of just another, test the waters type opponent. He's 19-6-1. So, not a barn burner. I just find this whole thing so intriguing, so odd how they've gone about it. I assume Gvozdyk is back in camp with Lomachenko and Papachenko and is still managed by Egis Klimas, who's, seeing his way clear to seeing what Gvozdyk has left. He's tremendously talented. He has a stellar amateur record, just like the other guys do. We'll see what he's got. I wish him well.
Any thoughts on the return of Oleksandr Gvozdyk, Daniel and Jacob?
It is a perplexing story because when it came to Gvozdyk, he was on both ends of what were emphatic beatdowns in boxing. Remember, he's the guy that ultimately retired Adonis Stevenson.
Yeah.
With just the way that he brutalized him. And then he suffered a similar fate at the hands of Beterbiev. And interesting enough, like Gail mentions the club fight, it actually reminded me of, I forgot what it was. I think it was before the Canelo fight or somewhere where Liam Smith, before he got into a big fight, in order to clear the way to make it justifiable, had to get another fight in, and he actually fought like a 4-rounder in some club in Spain that was sanctioned. So this is going to be an interesting adventure because there isn't much that has changed in the division for Gvozdyk, since it has that Beterbiev is still there. Bivol is still there. And so not a lot of the top players have moved. And you have to see whether 3 years away from the ring, if the ring rust has affected it, or if it's actually helped heal up any injuries or any lasting damage that the Beterbiev fight made, and if he's ready to go full bore into the division again. Because if it does, then that's a nice little monkey wrench that can be thrown in the three-way circus that is Canelo, Bivol, and Beterbiev. So that'd be interesting to see. But I just want to see if he comes out okay with it, because that beating that he took at the hands of Beterbiev was not pretty. And so you really have to see how much of that could affect them physically, and how much that affect them mentally, because mental is always going to be the hardest block to remove.
Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's doing it the smart way by, again, fighting this guy on a 6-rounder, Obanda. Coming out of that, when you come down from a beating, like Daniel was saying against Beterbiev, which it was a beating, you don't want to go back in with a killer. You need to see, like, if you're, especially after the layoff you had of 4 years roughly, or about 3 years, if you still got it and you still have that hunger. So I think the Obanda fight's a good indicator. He unanimous decision, won all the cards, and then you go to this this opponent here, who, again, like Gel's mentioned, his record isn't like anything to write home about. So you're not, you can still kind of see whether what happens with this fight if you want to continue. It's not some kind of world beater, somebody that I think is going to hold like as big of a threat, like a Beterbiev would. Yeah, I think he'll come out with a victory, and he'll see whether he wants to continue competing, and if he'll take maybe another couple warm-up fights to see if he's at the level to challenge for light heavyweight again.
And I think we're going to end the show, this particular episode, on that note. I want to thank everybody who was watching live. Thank all the comments and questions in the live YouTube chat. MG, excuse me, Los Libertinos podcast. Beagle 47. Again, thank you for your comments and your questions. Going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from nyfights.com for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, for those who want to check you out on occasion on TMZ Live. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Right, on nyfights.com. nyfights.com is where our coverage is, not just me, but our whole NY Fights team. I will be covering Canelo and Ryder for those of you who do not want or need to chew up that $80. So spend it on something you enjoy and read our recap.
Go to you, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to check you out talking movies, TV, and film. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It was a nice, I know I had a little bit of a hiatus, but I know we have our little chat DM or special DM that I appreciate, still talking boxing with you guys when I can't be on the show. But yeah, I could be found on Twitter at JRATM23, but I'll be honest, I'm becoming less and less engaged with that social media thing. So I don't know. I try to go to the fights that are in the area, although I did miss the Fundora fight of Timber. But yeah, if it's in the local area, I'll try to get out to Vegas maybe in a few more times this year, or at least a couple more times this year. And yeah, you can hit me up there. I'm on Instagram also, and I usually just post about like the fights that I go to and stuff. But yeah.
Last but certainly not least, Daniel from the inscriber and for boxing news. Who, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, who was on the losing end tonight, Game 2 against the New York Knicks. Let the folks know where they can find you.
While it's still up, folks, Rockers99 on Twitter, RAWKZ99. You never know what can happen, but definitely catch me on there because hopefully we get. I saw the Libertinos comment that, and it's very true in many ways. It's probably mainly because it is in Mexico, but it's probably has been the least, at least hype that I've seen around a Cinco de Mayo fight, Cinco de Mayo weekend fight we've had in a while. That can be both good and bad. But hopefully we get pick it up at the end of the year, and if the Heat lost, and maybe eventually the Panthers could win and burn Ontario to the ground with the way they won against the Maple Leafs today.
For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, Brother JR76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance, you know what it is with me on IG and TikTok, Brother JRSC. On the next episode, we will do a recap of the Mexican, the redhead superstar, the Mexican himself, Canelo Alvarez, his return to the ring against Ryder. We will also do a recap of El Rey, Julio Cesar Martinez and his fight with Batista, as well as the return of Oleksandr Gvozdyk, recap of his fight with Ricard Bolotniks. We will also do give me a quick second here, some technical issues on my end. My apologies right quick. We will do a preview of some fight that's happening on the week on May 13th, excuse me. Alan Canuli returns to make the second defense of his WBO middleweight title, fighting Stephen Butler. On the undercard of there, you have one of the Maloney brothers, Maloney twins, Jason Maloney, fighting Vincent Astrobayo for the vacant WBO belt at 118. Also on that, those fights are going to happen on Stockton, California on ESPN. Also on the 13th in Las Vegas, Rolly Romero fighting he's fighting, just don't know if it's going to be a title fight because of the issues with the WBA junior welterweight champion testing positive for PEDs. Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I'm distracted by watching the Game 2 of the Lakers and Golden State. My apologies. So he's going to fight on the 13th in Las Vegas. On the undercard, Gary Antoine Russell fighting Ken Cruz. Francis Bartholomew also fighting on that same card. That fight, Romero, Russell, Bartholomew, that's going to air live on Showtime. So we will do previews of most, if not all, of those fights. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us. Appreciate your comments and your questions in the live chat. Once again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. As I said at the beginning of the show, you want to find out all things Pound for Pound Box Report. Please go to the site, p4pboxreport.com. You will see links to where to find Pound for Pound Box Report all over social media, all over the podcast platforms, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you will be able to find Pound for Pound Box Report. Again, if you wish to donate, got Cash Me, PayPal donation links. If you want to get your body right, please look into BODI. And at the very least, take advantage of the 14-day free trial. Again, for Gil from nyfights.com, for Jacob of Jab Hook Boxing, for Daniel of 4 Boxing News, and the Inscriber. This has been episode 402 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Y'all have a good one. Good evening. Good night.
Peace.